ESPN Radio's Freddie Coleman. You hear him from 11P to 2A every weeknight right here on 104.5 The Team. Freddie in Albany today for Coaches versus Cancer. What's up, Freddie?
Everything is good, boys, man. How's everybody doing up in the Capital District today?
Dude, awesome. It's rainy.
Well, we're getting a little nervous, man. The Yankees are struggling. Are they showing us that they're one game and done in the postseason?
Boy, that's a really good question because the old adage is true that anytime you have a winner-take-all situation, you don't know what's going to happen and how teams are going to react. I think if you're the New York Yankees, you should hope that the Angels are not part of that one-game playoff. Maybe the Houston Astros will be a part of that one-game playoff because they've been struggling, and all of a sudden they may not even win the AL West. So I think in a situation like that where everything has to be lined up for the Yankees in terms of not just pitching, but offensively, and they struggled at times offensively so far in September. So, yeah, I can clearly understand the nervousness because any situation like that would make me nervous no matter what kind of run your team has been on, whether it's been a good run or a bad run going into that one-game playoff.
So, Freddie, you're telling me to be afraid and not plan too deeply into this postseason as a Yankee fan?
Yeah, you should be afraid because everybody, I mean, no matter who's been great in Major League Baseball, in a one-game playoff situation, you don't know exactly how teams are going to react. Prime example, Kansas City looked like they were down and out in that one-game playoff versus Oakland. The next thing we knew, they're playing a Game 7 versus San Francisco in the World Series. So I don't care if you're a Yankee fan. I don't care if you're a Cubs fan, a Pirates fan, Angels, Astros fan. In a one-game playoff situation where you don't know how things are going to happen and you don't know how your team is going to react to that kind of pressure situation, we're not talking about a Yankees team that has celebrated veterans on there that have been through this because there's not one player on that team that knows exactly what a one-game playoff is all about. So who are they going to rely on that day that will give them confidence and make them feel not as nervous as you are, but a lot less nervous going into that one-game playoff? I think that question will be answered no matter who plays in that one-game playoff.
ESPN's Freddie Coleman in town for Coaches versus Cancer tonight in the Albany area. Mets starters or the rest of the field in the playoffs? Which one would you pick?
Oh, boy, the Mets can pitch, boy. I'll tell you what, whether it's Harvey, and he says, I don't want that here about that innings pitch limit once again. You got DeGrom, who's been good, Syndergaard, and now they'll have depth out of the bullpen with Neese and also Bartolo Colon. That's still the one thing that bothers me about the Mets is their bullpen. But when you got the Dodgers and you got Greinke and Kershaw at the top of your rotation, you have to hope it's not a 2-0 deficit you're going to face in the best out of 5. But the Mets seem not to have that fear factor, and here's why. They feel they can go on the road because they've been a better road team in the postseason than the Dodgers. And I think it's more imperative for the Los Angeles Dodgers to have home field advantage because I still don't believe this team believes they can win a game or two on the road if they don't have home field advantage. And you could look at Clayton Kershaw, who's been dynamite in the regular season, but his postseason ERA is over 5, and you know he's going to be asked about that going into the playoffs. So I know those two guys are great, but the way the Mets pitching is lined up, I'll take the starters of the Mets or the Dodgers in that series.
Freddie, we're hearing today that Victor Cruz's calf caused him issues, and he was not able to participate in team drills. What does this do for your expectation of Victor Cruz?
When you're dealing with something like that, and you still wonder that whenever he comes back, and I still think he'll be back by the middle of the season, but you don't know exactly how that calf is going to react, and you have to go out there and you have to push it, and adrenaline, you have to hope it's going to be that kind of dopamine you're going to need for your body. But when you rely so much on cutting and shiftiness and that kind of ability that made Victor Cruz successful, if that's not going to be there, then he becomes an ordinary wide receiver because as good as he is doing that, he's not going to. He can just be out there, be a pedestrian wide receiver, and you think that's going to help the New York Giants. Now, I will say this, with the emergence of what Ruben Randle's been able to do, we know how great Odell Beckham Jr. has been, and their two tight ends have not been bad. The Giants have not been able to have that become something that's going to be a problem struggling offensively because they have not struggled offensively without Victor Cruz. But if I'm Victor Cruz and you know that it's not going to be well, if it's beyond a hurt situation or it's an injured situation, then you have to take as much time as you possibly can and get back out there when you're fully healthy. Not just 90%, not 95%. You have to be 100% because you can't run the risk that you re-injure that and you're back on the sidelines again. And who knows, we're going to see you on a football field at any time in 2015.
Freddie Coleman in town for Coaches versus Cancer. Todd Bowles, is he the right guy to get those Jets to the glory land, Freddie?
Glory land, boy, that's a stretch, and I'm a New York Jets fan on that one. I mean, I'll settle for this team improving incrementally to be a team that can be a threat if they get into the playoffs. And even when they had their 2-0 record before they faced Philadelphia, I still wasn't sold on New York based on this reason, and that reason is named Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I know he was good in the first couple of games, but there were some throws that he missed. And when the Jets got into an adverse situation, being out 24-0, and yeah, the receivers didn't help him. Brandon Marsh made an idiotic play trying to do too much in that situation. And they didn't have Jeremy Curley, who's become a really reliable slot receiver guy. You know, Eric Decker was a really reliable number 2 guy, what we saw in the first couple of games. But I've seen this from Ryan Fitzpatrick before, in that he'll look really good for a quarter, he'll look really good for a half, he'll look good for 2 or 3 games. But he is who he is, and that's a guy that you can't even think about getting into the playoffs with and having a run in the playoffs, because he's not that kind of quarterback. But because of what happened with Geno Smith, and who knows if Geno Smith would be the right guy for this offense, I still don't know. I still think they made the right hire in Todd Bowles. I like what he's been able to do as a head coach, the way that he's a no-nonsense kind of guy, but he's a player's coach. But the Jets are a quarterback away from doing anything getting into the playoffs, and the quarterback that they need, as far as I'm concerned, may not be on their roster, because who knows when Bryce Petty is going to be available and if he's going to be a good NFL quarterback anyway.
Interesting. Freddie, the NCAA suspended Larry Brown for 9 games. Dick Vitale says he should be banned from the NCAA. Who's right? Who's more right in this situation? Where do you stand?
You know, I'm on that bandwagon in terms of banning him from the NCAA, because he's a pro coach. He's a pro-lifer as a coach. And he's now 3 for 3 in putting teams on probation. Did a great job at UCLA, got a ragtag bunch to a national championship game in 1980. He leaves, they're on probation. He takes a Kansas team with Danny and the Miracles, meaning Danny Manning and that team that upset Oklahoma in the 88 championship game, and then they wound up on probation. It's the same thing happening. It's the definition of insanity with a guy who we know is a Hall of Fame coach, one of the best coaches to ever coach in the history of basketball, whether it's college or the NBA. But you can't allow that to happen. And the only reason that he still has a job is because his name is Larry Brown. If his name was Armin Levac or Freddie Coleman, we would have been fired yesterday, and we'd have to get our resumes out and put our stuff in the box and leave the building, because he has that pedigree as a coach and what he's done on the basketball court. And he's made SMU basketball matter, and that means a lot at a school that is still smarting from a death penalty that ruined their football program. So I clearly understand that, because I'm on that bandwagon. I'm thinking, I know you're a great coach, but you're 3 for 3. That's not a magic number when it comes to putting schools on probation. And he'll get another job. Maybe he'll get another job. I'm not sure. But if I'm SMU, if you're really serious about making sure you do things the right way, how can you allow a guy to have an assistant, administrative assistant, the reason that they're on probation? And then he said that he did lie, but then he took 60 seconds, and then he had to get away from that lie and tell the truth. That stigma is going to be attached to your program, no matter what kind of great coach Larry Brown has always been and probably still is.
Freddie, when you look at LSU running back Leonard Fournette, he looks like he's a grown man playing with kids. He looks ready for the NFL, and now the speculation begins. Should he just sit out next year? It's already starting. What are your feelings on this? When the guys are ready after sophomore year, but they still have to stay in for one more year. How do you see them? What do you think they should do in that situation?
It's part of the rules of engagement, and I know a lot of people are concerned about his potential future earnings in the National Football League. It goes back how many players that we've seen that look great, and also they have a serious injury, and then they're not ready for the National Football League. But remember this, and I think LSU and their coach Les Miles, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that he's healthy enough for LSU football, because that matters more than anything else. We can try to look into the future all we want based on what we've seen from a guy that, in my opinion, is clearly the best player in college football right now. But if he's going to get injured, whether he's getting paid or not getting paid, that's going to happen no matter what. Leonard Fournette seems to be the kind of young man that has a great head on his shoulders. And I get the sense, and I saw this during College Game Day, if he and his parents can survive Hurricane Katrina, they can survive anything else thrown at them. That's more of a life and death situation than worrying about if he's going to be injured on a football field. So I understand where people are coming from. The whole Jadeveon Clowney situation that happened with South Carolina. But football is a collision sport, and players are going to get banged up, and players are going to get injured. If the rules state that you can't leave until after your junior year, then you have to follow along with that. Now, if Leonard Fournette decides not to play because he's worried about his future earnings and providing for his family, I'm not going to be against him doing that, because he has to look out for himself. But we can't expect the NCAA or college teams or college football teams or basketball teams to look out for athletes, because coaches are more interested in winning football games and using their best players to make sure they win those kind of games. Until that changes, you're going to have to deal with it. And then Leonard Fournette will have to make that kind of decision when this season is over, what he's going to do when it comes to his future, whether it's still playing one more year of college football or waiting a year and then applying it straight in the NFL.
Our boy Freddie Coleman in town in Albany today for tonight's 2015 Coaches versus Cancer. And Freddie, you've been emceeing this event now for several years, and this is the 10th anniversary of Coaches versus Cancer in Albany. We can all get more information online, cvcalbany.org. I believe I got that right. I'll double check that. But Freddie, the event tonight, every single year, is very important to you.
It's always important because anytime that you involve yourself in something that has grown near and dear to my heart and also to my wife Denise's heart, because we love coming up each and every year, anytime we have something like this that can let people know that we're not going to stop in our battle to eradicate cancer or slow it down as much as we possibly can. And you hear so many enlightening stories. For example, Peter Hooley getting honored tonight, losing his mother during the season to cancer. Then he has the game-winning shot to put it through an NCAA tournament. Or Fan McCaffrey, who's still a revered figure in the Capital District because of what he did with Siena basketball and having his son go through cancer. Now he's been able to push that back and become a healthy kid, as healthy as he possibly can. And for all of us of the ESPN family, where we lost one of our owners, Stuart Scott, earlier this year, he fought a great battle against cancer, but in the end, cancer got him. So those kinds of things are always going to mean a lot to me because I don't want to lose any more people, whether I'm close to them or not close to them, due to cancer. And anything we can do to provide, whether it's time, whether it's finance, whatever it is, every little bit helps, and it leads to bigger and bigger things to make sure we find the right kind of resources, we find the right kind of technology to find a way to beat this thing and not allow it to touch our lives like we've seen it do time and time again.
cvcbasketballalbany.org for more details about tonight's event in Troy. So, Freddie, what kind of threads you rocking tonight, baby?
Oh, I can't let you know that. I will say this. I'm going to be looking clean like a shiny new quarter. I can tell you that right now. Without any doubt, I will not be looking like a ragamuffin in front of everybody on my friends up in the Capital District, but it'll be worth a look. Let's put it that way.
Good stuff, man. It always is, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Freddie Coleman at Coleman ESPN on Twitter. You hear him 11 to 2 right here on 104.5 The Team every weeknight. Freddie, give Denise a hug and kiss for us. Tell her that we said hello. Have a great time tonight at Coaches versus Cancer. Thanks for dropping on with us today.
My pleasure, guys. It's always good to talk to my boys, man. And you guys take care and be well.
Appreciate you, Freddie.
All right.